Paula here again, and I'm so excited to give another Bible story here this week. Last week, we had a Bible story about Samson, and Samson had an incredible gift. It was a gift of strength, and yet what we learned, which was kind of a sad ending, was that Samson didn't follow his end of the bargain, the instructions that God gave him in order to keep his strength, and it ended up with a very unfortunate ending for Samson. He lost his life because he disobeyed. Well, this week we're going to read another story, and it's going to be out of the children's favorite Bible stories. But this time we're going to be reading about Joshua and the Israelites. And Joshua talked to God about leading the Israelites over into the promised land, and God gave him some very specific instructions to pass on to the Israelites. And the instructions were this: to be brave and courageous, and to follow his leading. And so Joshua went back to the Israelites, and he told the Israelites, this is what we need to do, and God is going to help us. And the Israelites said, we will do this. So what I want to do is read this story, because we're going to find that when you follow God's instructions, that it leads to the best ending, because God always knows what the ending is. So here we go. Joshua leads the Hebrews against Jericho. After leading the Lord's people out of Egypt, Moses died. The Lord chose Joshua to lead the people now, called Israelites, into the promised land. Be strong and courageous, Joshua, said the Lord. The land I promised you is full of people who do not believe me, and they will try to destroy you. But I will protect you and my people. Joshua gathered all the people together. He said, do not be afraid of the strange land and the city called Jericho that the Lord has given us. He will protect us. Remember the promise he gave to Moses long ago? And that promise was that he would take the Israelites into the promised land. The Israelites cheered Joshua. We will be strong and courageous, they cried. Joshua sent 2 spies into the city of Jericho. They went into a house of a woman named Rahab. They hid, and they rested in Rahab's house for the night. The king of Jericho knew that the Israelites traveled near his city. They want to take over Jericho. He found out about the spies that Joshua sent, and he sent messengers to the house of Rahab. She covered the spies with the stalks of a plant called flax, and then she told the messengers that the spies had already left. You'll have to talk to Pastor Michael about that one. After she closed the door, Rahab ran to where she had hidden the spies. They're gone, she said. The spies lifted off stalks of flax. Thank you, they said. You will be kept safe when our people return to take over this city. To get into the promised land, the Israelites had to cross the Jordan River. The river had flooded the banks. How are we going to get across, the people asked. Trust the Lord, said Joshua. It will help us to get into the promised land. And if you remember, they had to trust the Lord whenever they crossed the Red Sea. Then Joshua had some men pick up the Ark of the Covenant, a large gold box that contained the Spirit of the Lord. They carried the ark to the bank of the river. The river stopped flowing, and soon dry land appeared. A path formed where the river had been. The men carrying the ark walked to the middle of the dry riverbed and stood, and all the Israelites crossed the Jordan River. After everyone had crossed, Joshua said, "Come up out of the Jordan." The men carrying the ark finished crossing the riverbed to the other side, and soon the water began to flow again. Joshua and his army marched around Jericho 7 times. After the 7th time around, Joshua said to the people, "Shout! The Lord is going to give you this city." Now, Jericho was a city where people who were enemies of the Israelites lived, and there was no way that without God's help they were ever going to conquer the city. They didn't even have spears or swords. In fact, all of their clothes, everything they had was really old. So this is where they had to trust and obey God, even when he asked them to do a little something strange, like march around a city and shout. On the 7th day, the trumpets blared, and the people shouted, and the walls of Jericho came tumbling to the ground. Joshua said to the 2 spies, "Quick, go in and get Rahab and her family out of Jericho." The spies rushed in and brought out Rahab and her family. They took Rahab to a safe place just as they had promised, and soon Israel had control of the city. The people trusted the Lord and worshiped him for helping them to give them the land. Now, here we have the end of the story that is so different from Samson. Samson disobeyed, and in the end, God forgave him, but he died, and it wasn't the ending that God wanted. All God wants from us is our obedience whenever he asks us to do something. And when we obey, even when it seems a little strange, the results that we get are the results that he wants for us. And most of the time, they're way better than what we could ever come up with ourselves. This week, what I'd like for you to do is pray and ask God. Have him show you what are some things that he wants you to do to obey. And sometimes that's just being obedient to mom and dad and just doing what you know is right. Well, listen, I'm so excited about this coming week. I'm so excited about being able to see you next Sunday, and I can't wait to see you. You all take care. Bye.